Hello everyone, welcome. I'm joining you from the beautiful Keenan Music Building here on the campus of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I'm not wearing a mask. That shows we're moving into another realm here in terms of the pandemic. It's really a pleasure to be joining you. My name, of course, is Max Orr. I'm the Executive Director for Carolina Public Humanities, and it's really my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's event, Caribbean Connections. A program we had actually scheduled for early April 2020, but something intervened and got in the way. I think you might know what that is. Before we begin and introduce our performers, presenters tonight, I have to thank a few people. First of all, I want to thank the Cotton Merker Group at Morgan Stanley, who have been wonderful in underwriting a lot of our programs, especially our K-12 programs. We also want to thank Carolina Meadows, a retirement community at Chapel Hill, really offering us great support both for our public-facing programming and our teacher workshops. We have two wonderful sponsoring partners that we do extensive programming with. That's, of course, the General Alumni Association, who have put on all sorts of programs with us and promote and publicize our programs far and wide, so we want to thank our partner there. And, of course, the North Caroliniana Society, who have been just absolutely invaluable in supporting our teacher workshops, including live workshops that we'll be doing again with teachers this summer. So we're hopeful, we're turning the corner, and we're so thankful for our sponsors and partners in making all of this possible, including their help throughout this last year in making what we've done possible. I want to thank the music department, wonderful folks here, of course, starting with the chair, David Garcia, Jeffrey Fuchs, Jay Harper, and especially the person who's over here, who you can't see him, but Jesse Moorfield, who's with us tonight providing excellent support. It's such a great honor to be able to be in this facility, this world-class facility, and in this department using this great space, and of course all this wonderful musical instruments you see behind me. I also want to thank Carolina Public Humanities, Paul Benici, the man without nothing happens, who's doing all of the tech here. Of course, Vicki Breeden back at the mothership helping us and monitoring the program, and of course all the staff at Carolina Public Humanities have been working tirelessly to make sure that our mission of bringing the best faculty and scholarship at UNC to the many communities of North Carolina can continue to happen. I've sort of given you our mission statement. I should mention to you that Carolina Public Humanities does that in 3 ways, bringing faculty and scholarship out to the community. We do that, of course, through public programs like this, which we are so hopeful will be all live soon, and we are planning for a live fall, so please, we'll see you again live soon enough, and thank you for joining us in this virtual format. But we have also, of course, continued to do our work, I mentioned, with Carolina K-12, working with teachers throughout the state. And again, that will be picking up live in the summer, so we're excited about that. And extensive work with our state's community colleges and other organizations such as libraries and museums throughout the state. So we have 3 ways that we can make sure that Carolina doesn't stay just in Chapel Hill, but can be shared with the public far and wide. Of course, doing this virtually helps us do that as well. I want to just let you know that you can always support us in our mission. Some of you have paid for our program tonight. Bear in mind that all of our teacher workshops, community college workshops are done. We don't charge for any of that, and any support you can give us to help with fulfilling that mission is greatly appreciated. And I know Paul's dropping in some information on that. Okay, let's get to what we're doing tonight. Caribbean Connections. Why the title? Well, I want to explain that this is a show tonight, or a presentation tonight, in which we'll be exploring the cross currents of African rhythms, Latin song patterns and styles from South and Central America, and American jazz influences. And all these come together in the Caribbean. And while we're going to venture out of the sea, for sure, for some of these songs, we'll use the islands of Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Hispaniola, in particular the Dominican Republic, as bases to engage with the syncretic nature of what's come to be known broadly as Latin jazz. So we have a plan of action. You'll see these really cool instruments behind us. Our plan of action is to learn about the instruments that Dr. Álamo will be playing tonight, and then play songs using different instruments and in different styles. And in between songs, we will discuss the origins and influences we hear in the songs and learn how our artists approach them. We will have time for questions at the end of the program, so please use the question and answer button. But we're more than willing to be dialogic through this. So if you have something you'd like to address in the middle of the program, I'll be intervening in between the songs and talking with the presenters, and I can bring your ideas to the table as well. So please feel free to use the question and answer button there at the bottom. Let's introduce, why don't we bring in our performers and have them approach the stage. And while they're approaching the stage, I'll tell you who you are seeing and who these people are. First is Dr. Stephen Anderson, professor of music. Dr. Anderson received his bachelor's of music from Brigham Young University and his master's and doctor's in the musical arts from the University of North Texas in Denton. By the way, University of North Texas in Denton is where giants are created, you'll see. Award-winning composer and pianist whose discography includes Nation Degeneration, Believe, the 360-Degree Jazz Initiative, Distracted Society, and the Dominican Jazz Project, and more. It's absolutely prolific composer and arranger and performer. His most recent CD is Duo, a collection of duets with UNC bassist Jason Foreman. Anderson's work with the Dominican Jazz Project and Marim Jazzia Latin Jazz ensembles have led him to perform at multiple festivals in the Caribbean as well as South America. Since 2014, his work with the project was hailed by the Jazz Festival in the Dominican Republic as, quote, a national pride that delights us, end quote. He is also the composer of orchestral works that have been performed internationally, including the majestic Isaiah, performed at the Festival Internacional Musicem Lleida in Spain, and many others, including a very exciting project, the Concert for Puerto Rico, which will be put on in Colombia in 2022, which I was just informed about, so that's great. In addition to his artistry and scholarship, Dr. Anderson is also a dedicated public humanist, generously answering the call when Carolina Public Humanities calls on his services. So we're blessed to have done so many great programs with Dr. Anderson, and we look forward to him tonight because he always delivers. Thank you, Steve. We also would like to welcome Dr. Juan Álamo. I'm going to make sure we get the camera shot here. Associate Professor of Music and the area head here for wind, brass, and percussion. Dr. Álamo received his bachelor's of music from the Puerto Rico Conservatory of Music and also received his master's and doctor's in musical arts from the University of North Texas. I told you, giants come from Denton. Another noted performer and composer with expertise in a variety of percussion instruments from marimba to vibes to congas and so much more, many of which he'll play tonight. You'll also notice that Dr. Álamo's musical taste and abilities, like Professor Anderson's, range far and wide. He has performed with artists such as Kieko Abe, William Kahn, Ney Rosaro, Orlando Cotto, Steve Schick, John Wooten, and Tito Puente. He is also a brilliant composer whose works have been played by many of these international artists. Professor Álamo has also performed and recorded with the San Juan Pops and played the classical orchestral repertoire with the Puerto Rico Symphony Orchestra. If you're interested in his own music, his albums include Ruta Panoramica, Pursuing Freedom, Remembrance, and many others, so look him up. He is also the author of Milt Jackson, Transcribed Solos of the Master, co-authored with Arthur Lipner, and 4 mallet music for the modern marimba player, both of which you are going to want to go out tonight and buy, because after hearing these incredible instruments, you're going to want to learn to play them. Warning, it takes some practice. Both of our presenters tonight are clearly talented artists, but they are also first-rate educators. Dr. Anderson has won the prestigious Chapman Award for teaching from the university, and Dr. Álamo's pedagogical work has been praised as, quote, fun and interesting and a much-needed and very refreshing approach, end quote. They both bring their passion for teaching and interacting with students throughout the year to UNC students, but also coordinate the UNC Carolina Summer Jazz Workshop held each year on campus, and thankfully will occur again this year live on campus. That's a great thing. Dozens of students, hundreds some years, coming to campus for intensive instruction, and liberating performance. It's really a remarkable undertaking. So thank you for sharing all of that wonderful work with the students that come here. Both of our presenters are great. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to stop me talking and get into some action. What we're going to do is we're going to play a series of songs, and each song will represent a different style from a different area, and we're going to see all of these connections come together. We'll be putting up the names of the songs and the different instruments being played, as well as the composer and the style of music that is in, and we were going to kick off the conversation with some music. Gentlemen, welcome. I'm delighted to have you here and can't wait to hear your wonderful music.
Thank you.
There is thundering applause in the virtual world right now.
Thank you.
Beautiful song. First, I just want to ask, tell us about the song, if you would. Just start out with, it's a Sonny Rollins composition. What do we know about this song, and why did we choose it tonight?
Yeah, choose it.
Juan's doing all the talking tonight.
No, you had to do some of the talking. You can answer that. I answer the other part.
Well, there's kind of like a top 50 list of tunes, maybe top 100, 150, and this is way up there. It's just a great tune. It's just very rhythmic. It's played by everybody, and it works really well in this setting. So we wanted to give it a little Latin spin.
So I know early when we were doing warm up and setting up and everything, I had mentioned the famous Sonny Rollins tune St. Thomas, which is based in the Calypso. Did Sonny Rollins do a lot of experimenting with Latin melodies or Caribbean rhythms?
I believe it's either his mother or somebody in the family has some Caribbean connections. I believe it's his mother that either grew up or came from Trinidad and Tobago. So in fact, I believe that's how he composed, what's the title of the tune that you just mentioned?
St. Thomas?
St. Thomas. Because it's sort of similar to a song that his mother used to whistle where he was growing up, something like that. I think that's the story that I remember as to how that song came to be.
And so tell us about this rendition that you did of Pent Up. So how does this work? What did you do to the song to change it from the way it was to turn it into the Latin jazz song that it is?
Well, I mean, we use a rhythm known as the Cuban son, S-O-N, which is a style of music that comes from the eastern side of Cuba, particularly for the city of Santiago. And it was developed in the late 1900s. And originally, it's meant to be played with the Cuban tres, which is sort of a variation of the Spaniard guitar. Has 3 double set of strings. And then they use this percussion instrument known as the bongo, which again, if we trace the origins of all these drums, they go all the way to Africa. And so they use that, they use the clave, this is kind of the foundation of Afro-Cuban music. So naturally, if someone else will be playing with us, somebody will be playing that clave. Right? And maybe somebody playing guitar. So I was just kind of using that rhythmic foundation as the basic groove, and then this drum. So we kind of use that as kind of the starting point or departing point. And then on top of that, we were just adding, I guess, the typical things that you do in a jazz setting, just maybe making some rhythmic variations and trying to play around with the basic structure of the tune.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the bass line that's sort of underlying, because you have to carry a lot with just 2 instruments here, and to keep that rhythm going, what is it about the bass line and the relationship between the bass line and rhythm in this particular song that keeps it motoring along?
So the thing with this music is that contrary to kind of the American jazz, where the bass does what we refer to as a walking bass, which basically just play 4 quarter notes, boom, 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 straightforward kind of rhythm. In Cuban music, we play this syncopated rhythm, emphasizing the offbeats, especially the and of 2. So if we're counting in 4s, basically the bass line will sound something along the lines of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. And it just gives that forward motion that it's like, are we, there where we at is where's the downbeat? Right, so unless you grew up listening to that, the first time you hear that, it's like, where's the downbeat? Because we are so used to. That would be kind of the standard way of walking a bass line, if you're doing this in the kind of the standard American way, which is, it has its own beauty. But so this one is a little bit more syncopated and has that kind of a forward motion type of groove. So it's one of the interesting things about Afro-Cuban music or Latin music in general. So for the most part, it tends to be a lot more syncopated, which also opens up a lot of room, if you will, for us to be creative rhythmically. Because also the right hand typically imitates what the string instrument that I mentioned before, the tres, will be doing. Those syncopated lines, something in the lines of. Rather than in the American way of playing it, the piano player most likely will be playing just chords, blow chords, instead of playing arpeggios, syncopated, arpeggios. So again, so you have all these rhythmic layers just opposed one on top of another, in addition to all the percussion instruments.
And this is a very commonality in Latin music,
Yes.
the emphasis on the rhythm, the emphasis on that syncopation.
Yeah.
Yet each of these have little subtleties and differences. What is it about the son in particular that might make it different from salsa or other types of?
Well, I mean, son and salsa are, son is kind of the grandfather of.
Oh, okay.
That's the beginning of what we know in the salsa. Is the foundation. Salsa is just a variation of the Cuban son that in New York, Latin musicians, particularly New Yorkers, Puerto Rican musicians who grew up in New York City, took song and they added elements of jazz, rhythm blues, even classical music, and they mixed that with the basic foundation of the song, with the clave, the basic bass tumbaos, but they added other stuff on top of that. And so we refer to that as, salsa is nothing but a commercial name. It's like jazz. It's just like an umbrella term that we use to refer to this music, but it doesn't really do justice to what the music is all about, because it doesn't define a genre per se. If we were to define that music, it's just a variation of the Cuban song. That's what salsa music is all about.
I think we should maybe hear another song, and we'll get into other aspects of rhythm and
Sure.
Composition.
So
what are we listening to next?
I know we are in the Caribbean, but we're going to maybe move away from the Caribbean for a little bit, and we're going to go South America.
We prepped them for this in the intro.
To with these connections, right? Because this music comes from the coastal region of Peru, so you have that Caribbean, element. But this is a rhythm from Peru. It's called festejo. I've been to Peru a couple of times, and so I'm fascinated with the way they play 6/8 rhythms, because they have this dual thing going, of 3 against 2. So on the one hand, you still feel the 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but then also you have sort of implied there the 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. Again, it just gives the music this interesting, back and forth motion, so it doesn't get stagnant. And that is even reflected in the melodies and in the way they play the piano and the guitar. So the basic.
Tell us what you're about. Yeah, tell us what.
So the basic rhythm on the cajon, that's the name of this instrument, sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Another thing is they kind of lay back the beat purposely to create even more tension. So you have that 3 against 2. They purposely drag the beat a little bit. It's just a beautiful thing. So we will play. What we're going to do is take a standard. This one is entitled "All the Things You Are," and we're going to play it using this rhythm, the festejo rhythm. All right?
Wonderful. Very nice. Again, virtual applause. You can hear it in the sky. I'm going to ask, Steve, I want to ask you a question if I could. I'll put you on the spot.
Not about Peruvian music.
Not about Peruvian music. No, how about Jerome Kern? How about this song in particular? And just the general idea about you're taking a song that was not written in this rhythm. What happens when you take a song and put it in these rhythms? What happens to you harmonically as you're playing it or rhythmically? What spaces are open for you as a pianist interacting with this song that these rhythms give you that aren't there if you were to, say, approach it like an old standard?
Well, you know, jazz is such a malleable art form that can be taken in so many different directions. That's why it has broad application internationally. I mean, you can go anywhere in the world these days and find musicians, and certain places of the world, I understand they don't play American standards so much, but it just has so broad up and opens up opportunities for interpretation. There's one line of thought that some of my colleagues have had, and just different clinicians that I've heard, that they don't like to stray from the original. They always say, "Do you know the lyrics?" And then if you do something like we just did, they feel like you're kind of deranging the original intent of the lyrics. So yeah, but on the other hand, for me as a composer, I think if Duke Ellington were alive today, not that that was his tune, he wouldn't be writing what he wrote back then. He would be reinterpreting, he'd be doing totally fresh new things. So in that sense, I feel like, we're keeping it alive in the original intent. But your question was about harmony. I mean, at a technical level, the chords go like this. But I can play any part of the chord or the scale and re-invert it in a new way. Instead of playing the whole thing like this, I can just grab parts of it, little bits and pieces of the scale. And so when I hear someone so awesome as Juan Álamo and just has these rhythms that are still new to me, it gives me all this creative inspiration to take it in a new direction.
I noticed there was a playfulness there at the end. It sounds like these rhythms, which many of them make me want to move, frankly. They also open up a sort of playfulness in the music. Is that a fair assessment? It seems like the rhythm allows you to do a little bit more back and forth with that syncopation that you were talking about, Juan.
Yeah, I mean the opening motif is part of the original tune. We just changed the rhythm a little bit. But we're still sort of adhering to the original idea of the composer. Again, I guess this is just a new way to look at a classic, standard that is being around us for centuries, for decades. And I think the composer, if anything else, he will appreciate the fact that we are trying to look at that piece from a different perspective, respectfully, right? I have listened to the lyrics, I have listen to the originals and so forth and so on, but I feel like if I were to contribute something, then I have to look at it from a different perspective and sort of bring my background musically and culturally speaking and blend that with what the composer left us. I think that the original intention is just a canvas that you can sort of reshape and rethink however you want to, as long as you do it respectfully.
Well, it sounded wonderful. How about another tune?
That's all we know. No, I'm
Okay.
Now, you said something about rhythms. If
Oh, yeah,
anything-
please, continue.
If anything else, to me, the challenge or what I was trying to challenge myself is try not to use typical bebop vocabulary, rhythmically speaking, when I was improvising, and trying to sort of use the idea of the 3 against 2 and that typical syncopated way of playing the 6/8 in the Peruvian tradition, which is different and it's a challenge in itself because that's not how you typically play the music. So to me, that's just another way to look at this, and treat it with a different approach and make it sound like a total new tune almost.
comment on that. So because he was pulling back, I was trying to be like an anchor and just lay down the typical beat. I don't know if that bothers him or not, but
No.
it reminds me of like the Count Basie band. The magic there when they'd play tempo is like this kind of tempo. The rhythm section was supposed to play very locked in on the downbeat, but the horns would pull way back. It's a similar concept. And there was a tension between the time feel, and that's what gives you that great swing feel in that band. So in this case, I was trying to be more what I call dot time. Actually, Lynn Seaton called these dot time, and he was playing buzz time, pulling back a little bit.
Well, you could hear it's that dynamic tension that makes you want to move, frankly. So,
I think
what
so.
are we going to play next?
Just Friends, is that
Yeah.
what it is?
And what can you tell? This is going to be done in what style?
So we're going back to Cuba, and we're going to play this as a cha-cha.
Okay. Well, that was just lovely. I don't know if you saw it. I'm glad no one else could see it, but you had me dancing back here, guys.
Oh,
That was
good.
fantastic. I want to, Juan, if I could ask you a little bit to talk about the malleted instruments and why
Right.
it is they seem to be so sort of synonymous with this style of music and why they're so suited to it, and maybe the history of how these came about with in relationship to this Latin jazz and Caribbean music.
Okay.
So tell us the different instruments we're looking at here: marimba and a
So
vibraphone.
to my right, I have a marimba, and to my left, I have a vibraphone. So the kind of the history of this instrument could be traced all the way back to the African balafon, which is an instrument that has been around us since the 12th century. It's a very old, antique instrument. And when the African slaves were brought during the transatlantic slave trade, when they were brought to the Americas, especially to South America, they started to build replicas of those instruments here. And then, so you fast forward, and so if you go to Colombia, if you go to Ecuador, you're going to have local variations of the African balafon. In Colombia, they call it marimba de chonta. In Ecuador, they call it marimba de arco, because it looks like an arc, I mean, the shape of the instrument. You also have other local variations in Guatemala and in Mexico. Then in Guatemala, around 1892, somewhere in there, almost simultaneously also in Mexico, they started to experiment with the idea of adding the black keys of the piano, because originally the balafon and those folkloric marimbas, they only have the white keys of the piano. They're what we call diatonic instruments, okay? So in 1892, particularly a family in Guatemala by the name of the Hurtado brothers. The responsible one, his name was Sebastián Hurtado, and in 1892, somewhere in there, he developed the first prototype, if you will, of a chromatic marimba. And that's what we have now. Then they travel. They have an ensemble known as the Hurtado's Royal Marimba Band, and they came to a World Fair. I think it was San Francisco in 1906. If there's any historians in the room who are better than me with
European
dates.
historians.
Okay, so they came to the States, and then in the audience there were two American musicians, J.C. Deegan, and I believe Moser was there too, and they were fascinated with this instrument. And they started to build those instruments here in the United States. And then all of a sudden, by the time you get to the 20s and 30s, you start to see these, versions with metallic tubes, because in South America, what they use is bamboo or wood or a gourd to create the resonators. This is like a speaker. Without this, the instrument doesn't project. And the rest is pretty much history. I mean, the instrument has become kind of the backbone, if you will, of percussion education. This is kind of the instrument that holds everything together, pedagogically speaking. It's kind of the most complete instrument in terms of what can we do as a solo instrument, because of the range and the facilities that you can develop with this. Now, this, on the other hand, is an American instrument, which not too many people know. This instrument was developed here in the United States in the 1920s. The first prototype was built around 1920s. So last year we were celebrating the 100th anniversary. Unfortunately, because of COVID, a lot of the celebrations that we were going to have nationwide were canceled.
Postponed, maybe.
Oh,
we
yeah,
can celebrate it
postponed.
with Carolina Public
So the
Humanity.
plan is to reschedule those. But anyway, and this instrument was developed almost at the same time that jazz was developing here in the States. So from the very beginning, it's been closely associated with jazz. In fact, the first person to record this, I believe, was in 1928, and it was by accident. He was in the studio. Louis Armstrong was doing a recording. The tune was Memories of You, and the performer was Lionel Hampton, who ended up being one of the most famous and important vibraphone players in jazz history. And so this instrument lay perfectly to play in jazz. It just has all the perfect elements. A couple of distinctions between these two, besides the size, is that this is all metal. So the bars are built of metal, and this is all wood. So obviously you get to different timbres. And then this also has a motor so that I can control. Inside of the tubes, you have these oscillators that we can control with the motor. We can put them to move really fast or really slow. Typically, I and most vibraphone players like to use the slowest speed, which give you this sound. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't notice as much. If I increase the speed, now you hear. And the idea behind this is to imitate the human voice, right? The natural vibration of the human voice. In fact, the guy who pioneered this idea of using this was Milt Jackson, who originally was a singer. And so he was trying to incorporate his singing background with the instrument. And then, so this instrument, I mean, originally both of them are, typically performed in popular music. This more so in folkloric music, especially in South America. But over the years, is being used in symphony orchestras as a solo instrument. I mean, I go everywhere doing solo recitals. In jazz, it's not really that popular. Only few people use this instrument. This is kind of the more common instrument. So I'm kind of an elephant in the room, if you will, because I'm kind of the only one who played this thing.
Thank you for giving us that insight into those. Really, I mean, just fascinating sounds that come out of them. And especially, I noticed you were doing something with your mouth on it. Were you basically using your mouth as an echo chamber?
As an extra, so you can sort of increase the velocity and further, You hear how I changed that, so.
You have to become an expert player to be that intimate with your instrument.
That's part of the final examination for a PhD.
Thank you for that. Why don't we hear another song? I think we'd love to do that. What are we going to hear next?
So we're going to move to the Dominican Republic, and we're going to do a tune by Horace Silver, right? Is that right? Did I get it right?
Great. And this is done in a Dominican style?
Yes. So maybe just a little bit of a demonstration. So this is a drum called tambora. And it's a traditional instrument from the Dominican Republic. Let's see, I use this. I might actually, but I have to change. So they have different styles of music, but perhaps the one that sort of identifies them the most is a style of music known as merengue. And that music was originally performed with this instrument, a metallic gourd known as a guira, and then an accordion, a bottom accordion. Over the years, they have added horns, piano, bass, and all kinds of instruments. The oldest rhythm, at least to my knowledge, is a rhythm known as perico ripiao. This is kind of the rural original folkloric version, which more or less sounds like this. Now, during the American invasion in 1917, somewhere in there about. Again, I'm not great with dates, so don't.
Dominican, 1965?
No, the American invasion when they invaded the Dominicans. I think it was earlier than that, but it could be wrong. Anyway, point being is the American soldiers used to go to the bars and dance to this music, but they did it in a kind of an awkward way, disjointed way. So the local musicians started to mimic the way the soldiers used to dance, and they came up with this rhythm that now we know as pambiche or pambichao. And again, the rhythm is going to sound disjointed because they were trying to musically mock and imitate the way the American soldiers were trying to dance to the original merengue. So it more or less sounds like this. So it went from this to this.
Can you count that for me while
Yeah,
you're doing
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. So I'm gonna just go back and forth between those two styles of or rhythmic variations.
What about straight pambiche?
Well, I mean, this is kind of the straight one. Well, it's the one that I know. There's another one. Again, I mean, this rhythm has countless variation, and I'm not an expert on it. There's another one that is a little bit more modern. It's called Mako. It's kind of the more commercial one. It's a lot more simple than the other two, But this is the one that if you turn on the radio, it's most likely this is what you're gonna hear. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, there's many others, but I think with those we can play a tune and give you a
Great.
little taste of what merengue music is all about.
Fantastic. very nice. Thank you for that. That was just tremendous. Oh, you're getting me dancing back here. I hope it's not distracting.
A great group.
We're gonna ask you to play another song right away, and we'll talk about it afterwards. So I think we have next up, if I'm right, might be Charlie Parker.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tell us about that little instrument there. That makes quite a bit. And you know, I will apologize. Apparently, some of the people couldn't hear it quite as well as we wanted to, but maybe you could do a demonstration in the
So
microphone.
this is called a güiro.
Güiro.
And so around the Caribbean and Latin America, there's different type of güiros. So this one is the Puerto Rican güiro. So the difference is it's usually smaller. The how you call this? The lines are very tiny, and we use wires to strike it rather than wood. Very tiny. Actually, this I believe this we used to whoever did this got this wire from piano strings.
Really?
That's what they use, I believe. So and this is the instrument that we play in Puerto Rican folk music or jibaro music, which is kind of the equivalent of country music here in the States.
And that's the rhythm that we just heard.
Yeah,
being
well, this
played.
is one of the many rhythms, right? So when they play, they have this music in the mountains that they call aguinaldos, which are Christmas carols that they play in the Christmas season. And so they use this instrument along with a string instrument called cuatro, which ironically has 5 instruments instead of 4. And then the Spanish guitar, and then singers. So this is what you will hear if you go to the mountains in Puerto Rico. They play this instrument, and they have all kinds of different rhythms. So I was playing, this is one of the most common ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or sometimes they do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the instrument that you will hear.
That's fantastic. We are marching through the evening, so we need to hear another song so we can get through our repertoire, and then we'll ask you a couple more questions. I have a question from the audience that we'll do. So,
Okay.
what do we hear next?
So let's see. Next we have Out of Nowhere. Is that right, Steve?
And this will be done in the Brazilian bossa nova.
Yeah. So we kind of using 2 different rhythms. One is bossa nova, but there's another kind of variation of samba music called partido alto that is one of my favorite, and it has a slightly different rhythm that goes like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, beep, bop, bo, bo, beep, bo, 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 beep, bo, bo, beep, bo, bo. And the other one. So those are the 2 rhythms we're going to be using. Right. And the tune we're going to play is another standard called Out of Nowhere. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Very nice. I love the way you two end some of these songs where you're looking at each other. So who's going to end it first? Sounds so beautiful. Thank you so much. Liz, we are coming up towards the end of our evening. I do have a question here that I think is a very important question that one of our participants, Jennifer Anderson, asks. I am a K-5 music educator. Can you give me some tips or resources to teach these styles of music?
Bring in Beverly Botford, who is a local percussionist that plays with us in his band, and then I play in another group with her. She's killer, and she's, I mean, Juan does this too, but that's one of her main gigs, and she gets the kids playing all these percussion instruments. I would recommend
you can just almost use anything, any instrument, and that's the beauty of it. And maybe starts with, actually, if we get to play the next tune, that will be kind of a perfect tune to use, because it's a very simple rhythm. And you can use any drum, essentially. So I need 2 volunteers. You will be one of them. Yeah, it's very simple. I trust you.
This isn't in my contract.
Well,
no one told me I was doubling
we are
tonight.
amending your contract.
I think you go like this.
So
With less feeling, though.
Yeah.
You can, in essence, take any of these rhythms and just, for instance, another thing you could do is just take that clave rhythm and split the room in however, it's 5 notes, right? So 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So you can start by having everybody clapping, and then splitting the class. You guys are going to clap the first 2 notes. You guys are going to clap the next 2 notes, or maybe have the class clapping the first 2 notes, and you as the teacher clap the next 3. Any kind of game that will engage them. Then you can go into, okay, you guys are going to keep the beat. You know, you're going to clap on 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you guys are going to clap 1 and 2, you know, the first 2 notes. For instance, pop, 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 pop. And all of a sudden, you know, you have an interesting rhythm going. You're teaching them about coordination, listening to each other, you know, all kinds of things. Right, so that's what I would do. Start with something very simple, even using their hands. You don't even need any instruments. They can use their hands, their voice, whatever. Or take a simple rhythm like this one, which basically this drum is just playing this. 1, 2, actually 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If you want to do this one. So 1.
I thought I was going to get the fun one.
1, 2. So that drum plays that. 2, 1. You want to try this one? So, and then on top of this, there's a third drum. And that's the one that gets funky.
Is that the
No,
quinto?
you want to do this one.
Okay, which one? Tell me what to do with this one.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 2, and. That's it. That's your basic planar rhythm.
Now can we go to Puerto Rico?
Yeah, we can go.
And we should all go to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
So I mean, you could use any rhythm like this one to teach your students.
It's fantastic. And it's such a great way to teach coordination, teamwork.
Teamwork,
A little bit of
listening,
math.
Yeah, a little bit of math too. I mean, you can cover so many skills with this.
Thank you for that. It's very generous, and I hope that you'll be able to apply that in the classroom. We are just about out of time, but we have time for one more song, and I understand we're going to hear a song from Puerto Rico, and maybe even from one of the most acclaimed Puerto Rican composers ever. Is that
I don't
right?
know about that, but it's a tune that uses this rhythm precisely, and the rhythm is known as plena.
And to be clear, this is an original, so
Yeah.
great. We're honored that we're hearing it tonight.
Watch the coda, right?
One, two, one, two, three.
My friends, Juan, Álamo, Steve Anderson, thank you so much. It's just been so wonderful to be here unmasked with you and to hear such wonderful music and such great information. Ladies, folks, I understand that we have a slight issue with some of the sound, but I want to let you know that we captured everything perfectly here. Sometimes some of the smaller drums might not have gone through for whatever reason with Zoom, but we know we have it recorded well, so we're going to post-production and make sure that you can get all of those lessons, especially if I was up here playing a drum, you have to hear it. So, you know, for my own sense of ego. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely educational. I've been wanting to dance the entire time. I have been a little bit. Luckily, your back was turned to me, Steve. But it's been absolutely fantastic. I want to thank, of course, the music department, David Garcia, Jesse Moorfield, and everybody here has been so helpful. Of course, Paul Benici doing all the work behind the scenes. It's a very complicated thing to put this all together, but it's not as complicated as this music. This music is simple, but complicated. It hits you in such a simple, wonderful place, and it's just so rich and deep underneath it. So thank you for giving us just an insight into that. And thank you, Juan.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Steve. And
Thank
we'll
you for having us.
hope you'll come back and join us again. And best of luck in the jazz workshop. It's going to be excellent.
Thank
So
you.
glad you can have live students here again.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you for joining us. We hope you will join us for other humanities programs coming up. We're doing Play-Doh this weekend, so there's still time to sign up for that with Jeff Sarah McCord. Of course, we have a wonderful music program next week with Robert Buxton doing The World of Chopin. We'll be back here in the music department. Maybe we can incorporate some Latin rhythms into Chopin. He could use it. Of course, check out our website, humanities.unc.edu, for all of our programming. Thank you for joining us tonight, and have a wonderful evening. Take care.